Good evening. I welcome you all to this meeting of the Cardinia Shire Council and now declare the meeting open. Due to the current COVID-19 restrictions, we are unable to have a public gallery present, but the meeting is being webcast live over the internet so that members of the public are still able to watch these proceedings. So I welcome everyone tuning in to the live stream. Moving to the prayer, I ask Councillor Ross to say the prayer. Thank you, Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. God Almighty, we humbly request that you bestow your blessings upon this council, direct and prosper our deliberations to the advancement of your glory and to the betterment of the peoples of Cardinia Shire. Amen.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. The Cardinia Shire Council respectfully acknowledges that we are on the traditional land of the Bunurong and Wurundjeri people and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Mr. Doug Evans, do we have any apologies?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Minutes of the previous meetings. Can I have a motion, councillors, please, to adopt the minutes of the previous meetings as listed in the agenda? Can I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Seconded by, just seek clarification, would a councillor being present have to be? So, Councillor Radford? Is that okay? Yeah, preferably, yes. Thank you, Councillor Moore. Those in favour, please indicate by show of hands. Thank you. Carried. Thank you. Councillors, do we have any declarations of interest? Any councillors wishing to declare any conflict or declarations? Councillor Ross, I believe you might have a declaration. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I have a conflict of interest on item 6.2.2, thank you. And if you just, when that comes up, I'll just leave the room and someone wants to come and get me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. We note that declaration. Before we start tonight's meeting, I just want to acknowledge the great work of our immediate past Mayor, Councillor Jeff Springfield, who's the Deputy Mayor. Can I ask you to come forward? I've got a presentation to give you. So it is with great pleasure that I present you with a photo album of the images taken during your mayoral year. I hope that this will serve as a lasting reminder of the year that you served as Mayor. So, congratulations, Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Jeff Springfield. Before you say some words, I just want to acknowledge it has been a very challenging year for you and a year that you probably never would have expected in your lifetime. So I commend you on your amazing efforts through those challenging times and very different times. So if you'd like to say some words, that'd be great, Councillor Jeff Springfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, councillors, for your support and officers over the last year. As the Mayor pointed out, it has been a very difficult time, not just for our local communities, but across the entire globe, really. We've faced something unprecedented, and that word has been used an unprecedented amount of time in the last 10 months, I believe. But we certainly have faced some trying times, and I really appreciate this acknowledgement of my time at the helm during this last year. It was an honour to have the confidence of my peers, many of which are still in this room, and some that have left us from the last council term. But it was an honour to have the support of my peers to help lead this council through these trying times. And, you know, if I could make it better and different for the community, I certainly would, but I certainly would never want to step away from the responsibility of having the choice in front of us to try and make the best outcomes for our community when as the opportunity presented. And I hope that we've done that. And I feel as a council team, our last council term did a great job of that. We had a great team of officers here. And our CEO, Carol Jeffs, who's no longer referred to as the new CEO because she's more than 24 months on the job now. But we are so fortunate to have her, helping to lead this organisation through these difficult times, and she has had a baptism in fire when it comes to being a chief executive officer of a local organisation. Bushfires first year, pandemic the second year, and who knows what's going to come in the coming year for your term, Mr. Mayor, but let's hope it's calmer waters moving forward. So thank you everyone, and thank you for this acknowledgement and this presentation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thanks for your leadership. Moving on to the agenda. Council conducts its meeting according to a consent agenda. Councillors have advised the matters for consideration this evening that they wish to discuss or debate. The remaining items will be adopted without discussion. The items withdrawn for tonight's proceedings are as follows. Item 6.2.1, the annual report for 2019 to 20. I personally have withdrawn this motion and move the officer's recommendation to receive and note the report as detailed in the agenda. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Stephanie Davies. Thank you. So, thank you, councillors. Tonight we're moving the annual report. It's a big document. I think most people can access it on the internet, but councillors have received a hard copy. I just want to highlight some of the key achievements of the last 12 months. Council adopted our Cultural Diversity Plan 2019 to 23, building on our commitment to culturally, linguistically and religiously diverse communities and helping to guide our work over the next 4 years. Progress the development of the Draft Reconciliation Action Plan 21 to 22. 3 years into our 4-year Disability Access and Inclusion Action Plan 2017 to 21. We have now completed 26 of the 30 actions and look forward to continuing to work with the Cardinia Access and Inclusion Advisory Committee in monitoring and implementing the action plan. Council adopted its 2021 budget and council plan following community consultation. This budget reflects our responsible financial management with careful and responsible consideration given to the existing and possible future impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. We continue to advocate for the needs of our Shire and actively sought grants, funds from a variety of Victorian and Australian government funding programs. As a result of our advocacy efforts in 1920, we attracted $10.4 million in government grants. Major projects completed in 2019 and 20 include Deep Creek Reserve, Hills Hub, James Bath Recreation Reserve, Lang Lang Community Recreation Reserve, Bunyip Recreation Reserve Soccer Pavilion, Worrell Reserve Pavilion, Cardinia Cultural Centre redevelopment. I note that we still haven't officially opened a number of those community facilities, so we look forward to that happening in the near future. We progressed our Better Local Roads program, including the strategic sealed road project to improve 40 kilometres of unsealed roads across 7 locations. The Australian Government committed $150 million in funding to be provided in stages over the next 9 years, starting in late 2019 for the Sealing the Hills project to improve additional 111 kilometres of unsealed roads in the hills. A project to upgrade key intersections along the Princess Highway from Beaconsfield to Pakenham to help reduce congestion and travel time. Our enhanced standard, Sustainable Buildings, has been adopted by Council and helps ensure that Council buildings continue to be built, upgraded and operated in an environmentally sustainable manner. Awarded the tender for our new curbside garbage, recycling and organics waste collection services, including food waste collection, which I know has been welcomed by those residents who's signed up to that service. Work was undertaken to move to new bookable hard waste collection service across the Shire. Continue to support local businesses and deliver a number of networking, training and promotional opportunities through Casey Cardinia Region, a partnership between Cardinia Shire Council and Casey Council. We remain committed to developing employment precincts in the Shire to build town centres, facilitate employment opportunities and attract industry investment in the Shire. So that's a summary of what's in the annual report, and I now move to my seconder, Councillor Stephanie Davies, if she wishes to say some words. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just wanting to voice support from the comprehensive annual report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Any other speakers for or against the motion before us? There being none, I think I've said enough. So I put the motion. All those in favour, please indicate. Thank you. Carried. Thank you. Now, I do move to item 6.2.2, Progress Report Audit of Expenses Matter. Councillor Ross, I note that you've declared a conflict of interest and you are now leaving the chamber. So I do note that Councillor Ross has now left the chamber. So Councillor Springfield has withdrawn this item. Thank you, Councillor Springfield.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to move that Council note the progress made in the audit of Councillor Ross's expenses as set out in the Council Resolution of 17th of August 2020 and the 21st of September 2020, and consider the final report in relation to the audit of Councillor Ross's expenses at the December 2020 Ordinary Council meeting. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Springfield. I now asking for a seconder, please. Anyone wishing to second that? Thank you, Councillor Davies. Thank you. Moving to the mover, Councillor Jeff Springfield. Thank you, Councillor Springfield.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. There's not a lot to add to this discussion tonight, I believe, but I thought it was worthwhile to have the opportunity just to update the council on this progress. And we have a brand new council here before us that didn't start this process back in August when it first did start. So I think it was just relevant to just to bring this forward and just note the progress of it. There has been some, Mr Mayor, in the community, there has been some commentary around what's happening in this space, and I believe this council can easily reassure the community that we are taking our due diligence to and due process, procedural process to undertake this investigation and this report so that it is adequately looking at all sides of the story, and I look forward to this coming back at our next meeting, which is only in a couple of weeks' time. At this point I have nothing further to add, Mr Mayor, but just to say that this is progressing well, and I am confident in our officers and the engagement of Justica lawyers beyond that to conduct this report. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Springfield. I'll go to the seconder, Councillor Stephanie Davies. Thank you, Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll reserve my right to speak on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Any further councillors wishing to speak for or against the recommendation? Thank you. I note Councillor Ryan to speak. Thank you, Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Reading the report, it's been quite invalid information, and I think it's really good that all tracks are being covered in the most professional way. The only concern I've ever had is the expense of the lawyers that it's costing when it could have been dealt with inside than go this far with the lawyers, because we're looking at tens of thousands of dollars, and that's ratepayers' money, and I think that's why the ratepayers are quite concerned, because that's one of the questions they continually ask. But we put it out there, we're transparent, and we're doing everything we can in this report to do the right thing by all parties. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Any further speakers? Thank you, Councillor Brown. Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'm pleased that this is progressing as well, and I hope that the December meeting will come up with a final report and possibly some recommendations that we can vote on so that we can put this to bed before Christmas. That's my wish, and I hope that can be achieved. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Any other further speakers? Before I go to the move to sum up, just checking, Councillor Davies, did you want to say anything? Don't need to, but just checking.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to confirm, as stated by my colleagues, the need for transparency, the need for accuracy, and whilst it is a very difficult and sensitive issue, and Councillor Ross is a well-respected member of the community, I feel that due diligence is being taken, and support Councillor Brown's comments that it would be great to have this all finalised by the end of the year.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. I'll go to the mover to sum up. Thank you, Councillor Springfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to my fellow councillor colleagues for their comments. I too agree with Councillor Brown. I hope that Santa's listening tonight and he gives us this, we can get this sorted out by Christmas, so everyone can have a nice Christmas. So look, thank you, councillors. Again, I am assured that the process is undertaking all necessary steps required, and I have confidence that we will see a report in the coming weeks for the December council meeting that will be, put to rest what our steps are moving forward our next steps. So that's all we can ask for, and I am, again, like I said, confident the due process is being taken in the best interests of all concerned. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Springfield. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please indicate. Thank you. Those against? Carried. Thank you. I now invite Councillor Ross back into the chamber. Thank you. Mr. Evans, thank you. Thank you. I do note that Councillor Ross has returned to the chamber. Moving to item 6.5.1, the major projects report, which has been withdrawn by Councillor Jeff Springfield. Thank you, Councillor Springfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council note the report.
Thank you, Councillor Springfield. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Tammy Radford. Moving to the mover. Thank you, Councillor Springfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, the major projects report is a big report that we get every quarter to this council group, and it ties in quite nicely with the earlier report that you mentioned with the annual report. So I chose not to comment on that because a lot of these things tie in together, and it is uniquely different at this point in time due to the recent restrictions we have faced of COVID-19 and adapting for all these projects that are underway for our community. Look, it's fair to say some things have been delayed, and it is with great apologies to our community groups that have seen these delays with expectations of time frames not delivered. But not everything has been delayed, and it's great to see that some projects have adapted and moved forward on due schedule. Great things such as Comley Banks, which I'll only mention briefly because Comley Banks was once in the Rangers ward, and I was very impressed with the work of that builder back when we visited the site, Mr. Mayor, back in April or May perhaps we went there, and it's coming along on track for completion in January, which is going to be a fantastic asset. I will tell my new colleague, Councillor Radford, that I'm going to come and have a look. I'm going to come and spend some time there. It's such a great looking building. So hopefully she welcomes me into the new officer ward when I do so. And I apologise, Council. I'm just making a little bit of light heart in our comments here, but that's okay. That's what Council's all about, good nature, I think, this Council. it's great to see this report coming at the very start of our new council term, and I look forward to seeing many of the projects that we initiated in the last council term coming to completion in the coming years. And there's been many projects that, Mr. Mayor, you mentioned, they've been held off for their opening and their launches and such, which are all coming to happen really soon now that we're out of this space of the restrictions we had to face throughout winter. And I think we're now hit 31 days perhaps of 0-0, so it's very looking good for the state moving forward and our major projects. I'll leave it for there for the moment and allow my other councillors to speak if they wish to, but thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Springfield. I'll move to the seconder, Councillor Tammy Radford. Thank you, Councillor Radford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to highlight this report as well. It's been great to see what has been achieved in a year of COVID. There's a lot through here, a lot in Officer Ward as well, but one in particular I wanted to highlight was the Officer Recreation Reserve upgrades to the Western Oval Pavilion. Today I went with Mr. Mayor to go and visit the finish. It's because it's completed. We went and visited it, and it's just fantastic. The upgrades are going to be so welcomed because apparently the facilities were very bad, and so now there's female accessible facilities. It's got a public accessible bathroom, a gym, 2 treatment rooms, 2 umpire spaces and a first aid facility, 2 change room spaces and amenities, and 2 dedicated accessible car parking spaces have now also been added. So this pavilion is home to 3 particular clubs, the Officer Cricket Club, Officer Kangaroos Junior Football Club and the Officer Senior Football Club. So that'll make a big difference to their seasons coming up. We also met there with the President of the Officer Recreation Reserve, Rob Porter, who is a long-time resident of Officer, and shared some stories of how his family actually volunteered to build that original pavilion. So that was so nice to hear, and he's very proud of the job, and I commend the Officer Recreation Reserve Committee on the hard work and dedication that they've done to ensure that this facility can suit everybody. This project was jointly funded by Council and the Victorian Government through Sport and Recreation Victoria as well. So well done to everybody involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Radford. Well spoken on that very fantastic new upgraded facility, so thank you. Any other further speakers, please? Thank you, Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Yes, we have over the last 4 years achieved a lot of projects, and I'm really proud of the team that we work with. Without the team behind the scenes, the officers and the CEO encouraging the officers, we wouldn't get these projects done as quickly as we can. And the input of the councillors. I think the councillors are one of the front faces. It's important that we oversee what's being done because a lot of these projects are things that we've pushed for in our aspirations, so it's really important. I just wanted to mention a couple that that were part of Central Ward and Tumut Reserve Northern Pavilion. Now that's in the process, the same as the Southern Pavilion, which will be really great. It's a long time coming, and that project will be a while off, but it will get there. And I think one of the biggest things, one project that I'm really, really proud of is there was a park in Pakenham Hills, and from 2000 has never had a playground equipment. And to see it now that it finally got finished just before election time, to see the families enjoying it, to see the children getting on the equipment and even some of the adults getting on the equipment is fantastic. So it's been utilised so well right next to the primary school. So, and the feedback from the parents, the grandparents and the children has been so wonderful that they've finally got something to get out there there and enjoy now the fresh air and interact with other children. So that's one of the projects that I'm really proud that finally got done. So, Councillor Ross might have some other things to talk about, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Any other councillors wishing to speak? Thank you, Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just highlighting a few things in this major projects report. IYU Reserve is going to have an athletics facility there. For anyone who's seen the athletics facility that Pakenham has at the moment, I think it looks exactly like it did probably 40 years ago or 50 years ago. It's a grass track. It's been hopefully in the pipeline of getting a new design and moving to an all-weather track at IYU Reserve. This is a fully funded project by council. In the last term, we tried to move it forward by a year, but there was another Growing Suburbs Fund application that got up before that, so therefore the money got transferred back over there. But anyway, look, in this term we will see this completed. It says that the design completion for the 400 metre athletics track with all the other and the new car park included in the design will be completed by February 2021, so only not that long away. The next item that I wanted to highlight is something that I think everyone in this room has had a bit of a go at over time. The Monash Stage 2 upgrade with an extra lane coming out to Cardinia Road. I think everyone will benefit from that. At the moment, the clog pile that you get between here and Clyde Road makes it really difficult, and everyone tries to look for other ways to go around it. And I think that'll just make it so much more accessible, our area, and everyone will benefit from that. And the third item I'd like to pick up is the train station upgrades in relation to the car parking. I can remember when I was mayor, and I know Councillor Owen has lobbied heavily for the Beaconsfield area. We've always had some area there which was an open area. It was fully funded by the state government at that election to put in another 150 car parks there, which anyone who drives past at the moment can see that being developed. And Cardinia Road's going to have an additional 300 car parks, which is urgently needed too, because it overflows into the Safeway car parks or Woolworths car parks at the moment. The fourth item I'd like to bring up is the Multicultural Hub feasibility study. I must say in the report it says it'll be complete by May 2020. The feasibility, it must be May 2021. I must say this is a really, really important hub that all the different new cultures in our society have brought up and raised to our attention, that they'd like a place, just like our youth hubs or anything where they feel like they can belong, and it's something they've lobbied for heavily. It's a feasibility study which was funded again by the state government at the last state election. So we'll wait to see what that brings out and what sort of highlights they can bring. I know in the youth area we've had some outstanding studies that have come back that have always been acted upon by council. And the last one I've got is the Cardinia Road train crossing removal. I must say that's been a work in stages. They widened it at one stage, they did other things, but now it looks like half of Ayers Rock's getting put up there as they go over the top. But I must say that will be a huge benefit because at the moment everybody knows who goes down there, McGregor Road, the whole lot of them. It's a real bank up. And once you can drive underneath, it'll just make those roads so much more accessible. So, and that's meant to be completed in middle of 2021. They're just a few of the items. I hope some of the other councillors highlight some of the items as well, because there's a whole lot of really, really great things happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Any other councillors wishing to speak? Thank you, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've only want to bring one item up in particular. It's the Bunyip Recreation Reserve soccer pitches, which is exciting for us in Bunyip up there. The designs are all ready to go, so it's just a matter of the construction needs to happen now. And this project's been fully funded by this council, so it includes a cricket pitch involved in the soccer grounds as well, the pitches. So it's going to be exciting for the soccer club and the cricket club as well up there in Bunyip. But if I may, Mr Mayor, just slightly divulge away from
that item, which is all relevant to this item. Just bear with me and you'll understand why in a moment. Last Friday, I was lucky and fortunate to be involved in a presentation of an OAM on Friday. Mr. Tony Arrigo, who's like Mr. Soccer of Bunyip, and Tony Arrigo was one of the founding members of the Strikers, the Bunyip Striker Club, with Alan Cole and his lovely wife, Tony's wife, Carmelina. And they were the drivers of this soccer club, and it was really relevant to be there to have a look at that stadium. Is just something to behold for our community. It's just a great thing for our soccer club up there. So to see Russell Broadbent was there on behalf of the Victorian Governor General, Linda Dessau. So he was there to present Tony with the OAM, and it was a really great function to have. And I just thought I'd mention that because it's all to do with the soccer club, it's all relevant to that. But thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was a really honour to be there representing you and representing our council there for Tony's OAM. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. I do remember about 4 years ago when that funding announcement was made, and both Tony and Mr. Russell Broadbent was there, and likewise yourself. So it's great to see that we're almost about to open that facility 4 years later. So thank you. Any other councillors wishing to speak? Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to the other councillors. I'm excited to what's happening down south, by the way. Some examples are the Coralline Change Pavilion. There was a lot of delay over that regarding the community sports infrastructure loan, where we had to do some wheeling and dealing, and I think Christian was the one behind that, and I think Kristen, she was the one that brought that to fruition. I see that that's been granted now, and that's going to begin in September next year. The Kurirup Rec Reserve football, netball and cricket change rooms upgrade. Those facilities are over 60 years old, and they're going to be completed in June next year, which is a massive effort from staff and also the contractors. The secondary school at Kurirup, getting a new pavilion there to service the cricket and the football clubs, the juniors that is, because one ground obviously is not enough in Kurirup for our sporting teams. So in conjunction or parallel with the Education Department, with funding, Council have now decided, and the Education Department, that we're going to put a new pavilion in there, and it's going to be a modular type pavilion, and again that magic date, June 2021. So there's lots happening in June 2021. I hope they can meet the deadline there. And also in parallel, the ovals at the primary school and secondary college have been regraded and resown and all in all redone with floodlighting, drainage, etc., etc. They are now complete. And I'm really happy to say that the roads program, Main Drain Road, is currently being prepared, soon be ready for sealing, and it's quite a treat to see people come out and see a road that's going to be sealed. A unmade road being sealed is quite an event in the swamp, so we're really looking forward to that. And I met with the Mayor and our publicity people and the Gazette last week for a couple of little photos regarding that opening. But I'd just like to compliment our officers, really, our project officers. With the COVID, you would not know that there has been a delay or a big delay because of the COVID, because they've been pushing on, achieving. None of these projects look like they've really taken a real hit. Some of them have, but in the main, the officers have been proactive and kept these things going, and I'd just like to thank them for that, because I think it's a real testament to their drive and their commitment. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Any further speakers at all? No. Just before I go to the mover to sum up, it is a good report, Councillor Jeff Springfield. I love talking to it. Just briefly, our playground renewal works. I'm really proud of what we're doing in this space in upgrading some playgrounds, and our current projects are Kath Roberts Reserve in Beaconsfield, Keith Ewanson Reserve in Upper Beak, and Redwood Road Reserve in Gembrook. We're currently through the final consultation. Concept plans have been created, and our council officers are engaging with local school children and the general community in relation to adopting those final plans. So I look forward to those renewals happening. They mean so much for our community, these upgraded play spaces. The Princess Highway intersection upgrades, I've been banging on about O'Neill Road, and finally over the last month or so you've seen substantial asset and services relocation at O'Neill Road. So construction fences are being put up, and we're definitely going to see work start there very soon, actual construction work. So look forward to that. And Glissman Road is not far off behind O'Neill Road. Thank you, Councillor Brown, for mentioning the strategic road sealing program. It's great to see that being kicked off Main Drain Road in Kirirup, and I understand there'll be other roads commencing soon. So that is Council's commitment to seal 25 kilometres of roads across those strategic roads in the hills. So I'm really happy about that. I think it's 40 kilometres, $25 million project. Kenilworth Avenue. Who's driven down Kenilworth Avenue? I have, with much excitement. So since our last council meeting, it has opened up, and it's great to see that finally open. So thank you to everyone involved, our officers particularly, that's finally open. That is going to be a great east-west connection from Officer to Beaconsfield and beyond. Great pedestrian and cycle paths as well. So I will then go to the mover. Thank you, Councillor Springfield. Sum up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your comments, and thank you to all my councillor colleagues for their comments on the projects listed. It is a great report. There's a bit of something for everyone, and hence why I wanted to bring it forward today, so we could all have something to speak to if we wish to. I'd like to just make mention, Councillor Radford talked about the officer rec reserve, and I think that's a fantastic project because it was really so driven by the reserve committee there and the user groups there, and championed by our mayor, Councillor Owen, over here. Over this last term of council, he really brought it to the table at the start. A few years back, and really pushed forward, and I'd like to congratulate all of the last council group that did support you in that endeavour, and it's great to see that we now have got that over the line, and they're going to have these great facilities into the future, which will become a bit of a central point for Officer once we get this becomes the town centre. Once we get the rec reserve you mentioned as well, Councillor Radford, it's a fantastic facility and a long history they have just over the road from us there. So really great to see some of these projects get up and over the line that we have listed. Another great thing that this last councillor, the last council term, and I know I've mentioned that a few times, but all these projects were, instigated by the last council term, or many of which, if not before. The roads sealing projects that we've mentioned, and so much appreciation from myself and the community goes out to the executive officers and the officers of this organisation that identified. This was one of our greatest aspirations, was to address the issue of the unsealed road network throughout throughout our Shire and our communities. And it wasn't just pushed aside, our CEO, Carol Jess, took it on and said, this is a high priority, how can we make this work? And we came up with strategies towards it, and it's so, it's fulfilling to see that over this next council term as this rolls out and we actually really deliver this, along with the funds that was provided to us by the federal government for the sealing the Dandenong ranges. It's, we're really have moved forward in the last few years towards addressing our unsealed road network like we never have before. So I think that is a great outcome for our communities far and wide at both ends, all ends of the Shire. So it is really great to see. I'll leave it there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to my council colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Springfield, and thank you for your comments. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please indicate by show of hands. Thank you. Any against? Carried. Thank you. Moving on to reports or minutes of committees. We have received some reports from various committees. However, many of these committees have been unable to meet during the current restrictions. The report we have received are available if any councillors wish to view them. So thank you. If any councillors wish to view them, see Mr Evans. Moving on to the next item, which is councillor reports, delegates' reports as well. Councillors, do we have any councillor reports? Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. It's not a report as much as a statement that I was very disappointed to learn that the Lang Lang Township Committee have decided not to continue it as an incorporated association because they thought that it would cause too much work. I've been in touch with them since to try to get them to change their mind without a lot of success, but I'm going to keep trying because from my memory, that was probably the first township committee that we had in this Shire, and they led the way, and they've been a most effective organisation. And they're a real joy to go and attend those particular meetings with those people. But they're the same old, and I guess they're a bit tired. But I still will try to get them to form an association because I think it's important moving forward, particularly in those townships down around the swamp area, that they have some representation. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Any other councillors wishing to speak? Thank you, Councillor Radford. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. If I may, I just wanted to quickly take this opportunity to say how humbled and honoured I am to be elected as councillor for the new officer ward. So I'd like to quickly thank everybody for their support. I have had the opportunity to catch up with a lot of community organisations already and attended the Beaconsfield Progress Association AGM and the Officer Community District Association's AGM, all via Zoom of course, but I was very honoured to be invited to those and get to meet those people on those committees. They're doing wonderful jobs. Today I was also invited to go to the Join the Officer CWA walk, which was a Women Are Walking and Talking Against Family Violence. Councillor Davies joined me as well. So it was really nice to meet the women in that organisation and have a chat about how we can play a part in this issue. So I'd like to thank them for inviting me to that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Radford. Any other councillors wishing to report? Thank you, Councillor Moore.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I attended the Tynong Township Committee Progress Association the other day, which was the other night, their AGM, so I conducted their AGM. So it was a very lively meeting, the Tynong one, because they'd saved up all those things all that time, all those months and months ago, lists and lists of things that they wanted me to attend to, and I thought that was really fantastic. So it was really nice to go there, Mr Mayor, and conduct their AGM. They're a really good, strong township committee, and they do a really great job for the little township of Tynong, and very passionate about their community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Any other councillors wishing to give a report? Thank you, Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. Yesterday I attended. We haven't worked out quite what we're going to call it, but it's to do with the white ribbon, and it's also the Arts Association as well. And we are creating a special window in Pakenham Shopping Centre. And it's one of the shops that no longer exists near Target. So it's quite a large shop, and we're creating a Christmas window like you do in Myers. So that is in the process of happening. So each area will have a different story. So the families will be able to go and have a look, and the lights will be up. So we're in the process of still doing that at the moment. And I look forward to that because that will be a yearly thing that we're going to do for Pakenham Shopping Centre, just to try and get families back in, again, shopping locally, be local, talk local, be involved in some way and maybe create something yourselves amongst different families. So that's in the making, so keep your eyes open. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Any other councillors wishing to give a report? I'll finally will say some words if that's okay. I just want to acknowledge the passing of Betty Whiteside. She was 95 years old and she was definitely a living legend in the Beaconsfield officer area. So Elizabeth Whiteside was born on the 20th of April 1925 at Berwick. Second child to Thomas Clare Kathleen Whiteside. She had 5 siblings and Betty attended Officer Primary School. Betty rode her bicycle each day from her home in Whiteside Road, Officer, to her school in Berwick. She had a nursing career at the Royal Melbourne Hospital when Betty's father, World War I veteran, became ill and in need of care. Along with her mother, Kathleen, Betty returned home to be the carer of her parents. So Betty enjoyed researching history, which included reading and collecting newspapers. She had a keen interest and knowledge of the local avenues of honour, Beaconsfield in particular, as her father, Thomas Clare Whiteside, was one of the honoured soldiers. Her father is also included on the Officer Recreation Reserve Memorial Gates. Thomas Clare Whiteside served in World War I. Betty passed away peacefully on the 16th of September. So I just want to acknowledge the passing. I do remember Betty very well at a number of Anzac Day services at Beaconsfield and Officer. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that. She was a very fantastic historical person that shared her knowledge of the Officer area, Beaconsfield area, with lovers of history. So I just want to acknowledge that. And I also like to thank the BPA for helping me with some of that history. I just also want to note last week was a busy week with Zoom meetings. As both Councillor Radford and Councillor Moore did say, there was a number of AGMs. I attended the Officer Community and District Association AGM, the BPA AGM, the Cardinia Deer Management Coalition, and the Beaconsfield Bandits Basketball Club. So it's amazing how groups continue to meet in these very challenging times and they still continue to do business. So I commend them on that. So thank you, councillors, for that report, those reports. Moving on to presentations of petitions. Councillors, do you have any presentations of petitions? I have one. I have a petition I wish to table which has been signed by a number of residents of the Shire who they state are senior citizens and are very active table tennis players at the Beaconsfield Community Centre. The petitioners are asking that council build a permanent table tennis hall, possibly as an extension to the Beaconsfield Community Complex. So I table this petition and I ask that a response to this petition be prepared for consideration by council at the next council meeting. So thank you, Mr. Evans. That's that. So councillors, moving on to notices of motion. We've received 3 notices of motion. The first one being from Councillor Jeff Springfield, that being notice of motion 1057. Councillor Jeff Springfield to move his motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that Council resolves as follows. 1. The Chief Executive Officer must ensure that Council authorised officers refrain from enforcing Clause 60H.1.1 of Cardinia Shire Council Local Law 17 to the extent that Clause 60H.1.1 prohibits open-air fires from burning or continuing to burn on Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Thursdays in burn-off areas, as defined by Clause 60A of Local Law 17. This resolution applies to conduct occurring during the period commencing 1st of December 2020 and concludes at the commencement of the declared fire danger period. 2. All other requirements of Part 5A of Local Law 17 continue to apply during this period. And 3. Council notes that the purpose and intention of this resolution is to promote higher levels of fuel reduction in burn-off areas in preparation for the 2020-2021 fire season. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jeff Springfield. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Graham Moore. Mover to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So, councillors, this resolution, I moved a similar one last year, and it was in preparation to better equip our communities for the fire danger period. Because what happens, it can catch you pretty quickly. If you're in a defined burn-off area, which many of the central areas and built-up areas are not defined burn-off areas, and they don't necessarily need to be, but many of the outlying areas, are, and they have large properties with a lot of fuel that builds up over the winter months. So you can't burn off when it's wet. You can only burn off under our current local law on Mondays, Fridays and Saturdays. And sometimes the fire danger period all of a sudden gets declared. You've only got about 1 or 2 weeks notice when it gets declared, and it'll be upon us. Fortunately, it hasn't been declared by the CFA at this point in time, but we anticipate that will happen in the coming weeks. So this is just a little bit of extra help in preparation for the accelerated danger we seem to face in our fire danger period. And we witnessed this, nearly 2 years ago now with the Bunyip Complex fires. And in relation to that, I felt it was pertinent to allow our communities every opportunity to reduce their fuel as best as possible. And look, I'll leave it for the moment, Mr Mayor, and allow anyone else to speak if they'd like to. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jeff Springfield. Moving to the seconder, Councillor Graham Moore. Thank you, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Springfield, for this notice of motion. I think it's very important for our community to have this opportunity to have those extra burns. I know I'm in that area myself, right in amongst those burn areas, and I need more time myself personally to have those small burn-offs that we can possibly have. I know that I recognise that last year you did the same thing, and Councillor, I know that my community members were very thankful for what a great idea to allow them to do that extra burns, because of course with the extra growth we've got at the moment, with the weather conditions are ideal right at this moment for that growth, and so therefore we're in a dangerous area, and I think this year is looking quite threatening for our bushy type areas of our wards, like up in the ranges where you are, and down with the Bunyip ward in particular, with the Bunyip State Forest being right to work. But of course, we all know that it's quite complicated to get the perfect conditions to do burn-offs when it's not windy and it's not too hot, it's not too this and not too that. So it's to have those additional days to be able to have those additional burns when the conditions are ideal, when it's not too wet, as you've explained, Councillor Springfield. But I fully support this, and I hope your notice of motion gets up, Councillor Springfield. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Any other speakers? Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I understand the premise behind the notice of motion. The part I have trouble with is to refrain from enforcing. Is there a better way to word that?
So thank you, Councillor Brown. That's a question. So can I refer to the CEO, please, Ms Jeffs, if possible?
Through you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Brown, I'm not quite sure what you would envisage as an alternative. The reality is that we are unable to change the local law, so refraining from enforcing the local law for that temporary period would have the same effect as changing the local law. The local law can't be changed because there's a process to go through in terms of engagement and some thorough review. This motion would have the temporary effect of the change by not enforcing.
Thank you for that, Madam CEO. It's just that the wording is refrain from enforcing causes all types of connotations to arise. But if that's the way we've got to do it, that's the way we've got to do. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Any other speakers? I'll just say a few comments. I support this motion. I know in my community the majority of residents supported this motion last year. I do note that the current open air burning policy will be reviewed by this council and hopefully adopted by June next year. That process has well and truly started, but due to COVID-19 and the proper consultations and engagement with the community couldn't happen. So I believe that this sort of intention of this motion may be considered in the adoption of the new local law, the new open air burning policy, but that's obviously to come. So I acknowledge your comments there, Councillor Brown, but I just want to let all councillors know that the open air burning policy will be reviewed and adopted by this council hopefully by June next year. So yes, I support this notice of motion. Majority of my community members are seeking this. So thank you, Councillor Springfield. To sum up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and well noted with our open air burning policy. We're overdue to review and adopt a new policy that was going to happen this year, but as many things, COVID-19 put a spanner in those works also, and I'm hopeful that the new policy will include a measure similar to this, so we don't have to put notices of motion in the coming years, just to allow those extra days of consideration leading up to the end of their burn-off period, so that you can get in. We want to afford residents every opportunity to reduce the fire hazard. And I'd also like to note that we do this in many ways as a council, as a local government organisation, and we encourage residents to find alternatives to just burning off. Just burning off is not the only simple way. It actually does cause some environmental hazards and such, which are duly noted by some community members that don't appreciate burning off happening in their neighbours' properties. And hence why we offer the green waste drop-off period twice a year and encourage residents to utilise their green bins where possible when it comes to leaves and such, especially green matter and wet matter, which doesn't burn off very well anyway. And certainly if you've got your washing hanging on the same day, not a good combination. But just to note, this is one of many elements towards, helping our communities defend against the threat of bushfire every summer. And not one policy by itself is going to fix the problem, but it is my hope that if we keep enacting the best policies, aiming at the best outcomes time after time, that we will have the most robust overall strategy to defending our communities in the best possible way we can in the future. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, councillors. I hope that you will support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Springfield. I put the motion. All those in favour, please indicate. Thank you. Those against? Carried. Thank you. Moving on to notice of motion 1058 in my name. So I move the following: that a report be prepared for the February Council meeting regarding proposed works to be undertaken at the Beaconsfield Reservoir by Melbourne Water. Such report to recommend whether Council should adopt a position in regard to the height of the dam wall and other proposed works. So I move so. I'm calling for a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Colin Ross. Thank you. I'll briefly speak to this motion. Definitely, I've been following this issue as one of the ward councillors probably over the last 2 to 3 years, and I understand Melbourne Water has been leading the consultation. Council officers have played a part in that. I've attended a number of forums, but people in my ward have been asking me what is Council's position on this matter, the reservoir. The reservoir is an amazing piece of infrastructure, long history. It's well over 100 years old. It was a source of water for Melbourne, or definitely part of Melbourne. And there is a long history for that reservoir. There is a number of community groups, a number of township associations that are fully supportive of maintaining the dam wall heights and water levels. So I'm asking for a report for all councillors to consider and determine whether A, we have a position on this matter, do we have an advocacy role, or what is our view. So I welcome that. I note that it's a complex issue. Melbourne Water's got concerns about risk, also the ongoing management of this beautiful asset. And my personal aspirations, what I think most of the community would like to see is this opened up more often to the general community. It's a great asset, so close to the urban growth corridor. So I welcome this report, and councillors, if supported, we'll make a determination in February where we go forward on this. So I will move to the seconder. Thank you, Councillor Ross.
Nothing further, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Any further councillors? Thank you, Councillor Radford.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I've attended a couple of meetings just recently as well, and it is something that the community would like to see opened up. It would be a great space for community events and activities and going up for a picnic. It's a historical site and it would be good, I agree, that we have a position, and I think that's why I'm supporting this notice of motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Radford. Moving on to Councillor Springfield to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And I agree wholeheartedly with you wanting to bring this report forward and the community's interest in seeing this asset utilised to its best ability. Over the last term of council, this was, we shared the Rangers Ward together, and this was brought up several times. There is a strong desire within the community of Upper Beaconsfield there to see this environmental asset, utilised to its full potential, and I think that it really does have a lot of great potential there, both as an environmental asset and a community asset. So I am hopeful that that Melbourne Water will listen to the community's concerns, the people that live there and the people that have looked after this for all these years to date, and find an amicable outcome for all parties concerned moving forward. I think there's a lot of wins to have here. So I hope that that Melbourne Water will come to the party with this and find a good agreement between all. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Springfield. Any other speakers at all? Thank you, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a small note. I note this steering group, this fantastic group that's been involved in this, sent information around all candidates prior to the election, with all the information of what they would like to see in that area. I recognise it as a conservation area, this area up in that where the reservoir is, and I'd like to see, as you've mentioned, see it open up to the public and have it more of a parkland, if that could be possible in the future, would be really great. I know it's a huge cost to stabilise that wall. I know there's a big difference between the $6 million and the $4 million between the heights of the walls in that reservoir, but that's which Melbourne would have got to do. But this is only, I'm going along with this, it's only a report. That's all we're asking for here, to see where we stand with this particular item, and I think it's really good to make sure that we're properly informed on such items like this, with getting some information. So I'll certainly support the getting a report through from our staff to see where our position may stand. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Any other speakers? There being none, just in summing up, it is a complex issue, no doubt. It is a Melbourne Water asset. It's not a council asset, but I see that council can have an advocacy role in relation to this. I do acknowledge the amazing work of the Cardinia Environment Coalition, who over many years have managed that reserve with very, very little, grants to support the management of that reservoir. And it is technically called the Beaconsfield Reservoir, but it's right on the border of Beaconsfield, officer and Upper Beacon. I think all townships like to claim ownership to that, but it's right on the border. So thank you all councillors for speaking. So I put the motion. All those in favour, please indicate. Thank you. Any against? Carried. Thanks so much. Moving on to the final notice of motion. That is Councillor Davies. Notice motion 1059. Thank you, Councillor Davies. If you could move your motion, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I raise that the Mayor writes to Premier Daniel Andrews and Minister James Merlino, Minister for Education, to voice council support on the announcement as part of the Victorian budget handed down on 24th of November of an additional $1.6 billion for Victorian students with disabilities, to seek further detail on the scope of this initiative, to voice council support for their intention to improvements in access to the education support, including specialist schooling provisions for children with autism spectrum disorder, irrespective of IQ score, and to advise in principle support for new education services to be delivered in Cardinia's growth area.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Can I ask for a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Springfield. Moving back to the mover, Councillor Davies. Thank you to speak.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I welcome the recent state announcement regarding an additional $1.6 billion, and I believe that it is very much needed. I'm speaking today to yourself and in front of council about a cohort of children that are clinically diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder and a normal IQ range. Autism spectrum disorder, also known as ASD, is a significant medical diagnosis. It's a different neurology, a different brain to typical. It means different communication and a different sensory profile. So a different experience to everything in life from what the majority of people experience who are neurologically typical. It is the most common disability funded by the NDIS, and there is much more to ASD than Rain Man counting cards and Greta ruffling feathers and Sheldon Cooper making us laugh. It actually affects every person differently. And many autistic children successfully manage school with the current supports available, and many do not. Our government, our state government, provides special schools, but the reality of these is not something I consider impressive. Entry to these special schools is conditional on an IQ score below 70. So this is a very low score. Only 2.2% of children meet this. And you can count on one hand the number of special schools that service southeastern Melbourne. So mainstream school is where education is provided for the majority of autistic children. And unfortunately, it is very difficult for an autistic child to get any additional assistance in a mainstream school, such as time with a teacher's aide, because it is subject to archaic criteria. So in addition to a child having the ASD diagnosis, they must also have an extensive, significant speech impairment. And many don't. The majority don't. There's also a category for additional assistance if a child demonstrates severely unsafe behaviour. But I personally have been advised by teachers that it's virtually impossible to prove this to the Education Department, so they stop trying. So what does this mean? It means children with a confirmed diagnosis are in a class of 20 plus children and one teacher, and that there is no avenue for a teacher's aide unless the school has a spared resource, and let's face it, they almost never do. For one Pakenham family that despite 2 years in prep, including the second under the school's most experienced teacher, that their son has not made any progress in numeracy or literacy. The child says that he or she will never learn to read. The child's not invited to birthday parties. The child is increasingly withdrawn and angry. Within the last fortnight, this child screamed at the whole class that he or she was going to kill them and urinated on another student. The child is now refusing school at the age of 6. As parents, they see their children trying so hard to make school work, children that know they're different and children that are doing their absolute best. For this Pakenham family, they decide their best course of action is to send their child to either the Cheshire School in Glen Waverley or the Currajong School in East Melbourne. Despite school fees of about $12,000 annually, lost work hours and hours sitting on the car on the Monash, for this family, the expensive independent special school is the only option for their child to hopefully learn the basics. Many families cannot stretch their budget that far. A lot of families are deciding to homeschool their children, But for the majority of families, they persist in this broken system, knowing that their child's fate will likely be that of another local family in Pakenham again, whose 10-year-old autistic child now makes suicidal statements. Yes, a 10-year-old boy, a smart boy that is not reaching his academic potential and also showing significant mental health concerns. Not parented poorly, not a bad kid, but a victim of the system. And I'll speak finally about another family I know, in which the mother is a primary school teacher, and their son punched his principal in the face, distressed after a change in staffing. I've seen the photo. This principal had a huge black eye. I know this child, intelligent, kind, and full of love, not born rotten, and definitely not poorly parented. And these parents say that the teaching staff at the school have gone above and beyond. The parents have spent weeks and now months speaking with the education department, and they managed to get access for a short time to Victoria's one trained behavioural specialist. That's right, one. So there are more families in distress, and there's likely many more that we're not aware of. I'd like to point out that the Silicon Valley types that are actively recruiting autistics in their employment, recognising untapped potential in neurologically diverse people. Our Prime Ministers speak of the value of the STEM subjects, so science, technology, engineering and maths. And these are subjects that autistic children often excel in. If Australia's economic future does require great thinkers and skill in these areas, why aren't we doing it? And I'm not suggesting that their future economic value should be a determinant in providing access to education, but there is so much potential in these children. So in closing, to parents and carers, you're not alone, and to children, you are very important, and please keep trying your best. Mr. Mayor, I ask for your support in this advocacy, and thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Can I ask our seconder, Councillor Jeff Springfield, to speak? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to commend Councillor Davies for her advocacy for the families that are facing such hardships across our communities, and I fully support her notice of motion in advocating for these cohorts that we find within, mixed in within our communities. So my heart goes out to all families like that, and again, I commend Councillor Davies for wanting to support such groups. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Springfield. Any other speakers for or against? Thank you, Councillor Radford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also will be supporting this notice of motion. I think our role is to advocate on behalf of our community, and it's very important that all of our students, our residents within this Shire, have inclusive and accessible education. So whatever we can do to help with assisting that, I'm happy to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Radford. Any other speakers? There being none, I just want to say a few words. Thank you, Councillor Davies, for bringing this notice of motion before us. I fully support your notice of motion. Thanks for sharing your knowledge and passion on this issue, and I look forward to learning more from you in relation to your knowledge on this issue. And yes, I'll be more than happy to work with you to advocate on this very important issue. Thank you. I'll go back to you, Councillor Davies, to sum up if you have anything further to say. If not, we'll put it to a vote. Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No further comments.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. I put the motion. All those in favour, please indicate. Those against, unanimously. Thank you. Passed. Thank you. Moving on, I think we have no community questions submitted, but we do have councillor questions. So we have received 2 questions from Councillor Davies. Councillor Davies, can you read out your first question and our CEO will respond? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My first question is regarding the pandemic, and I don't think that we want to be sitting on our hands, that we need to know where we need to best work across our community to counteract the effects of the pandemic as we head into 21 and prepare for long-term governing. So for that reason, is it possible, please, that the council officers could undertake a preliminary assessment to investigate, assess and report back to council on community wellbeing at the present status of the effect of COVID-19 and with specific reference to health indicators, to financial stability, domestic violence and crime rates and vulnerable populations?
Thank you, Councillor Davies. I'll then refer that question to the CEO. Thank you, Ms Jeffs.
Thank you, Councillor Davies, for your question, and through you, Mayor, council officers will be happy to bring a report to the council in February 2021 outlining our community's wellbeing as it relates to the pandemic. But just really briefly, throughout the pandemic, council has been surveying the community to gauge community wellbeing and priority issues to inform the pandemic recovery. The survey was launched on Monday the 27th of April and has remained open on Council's website since then, and there have been 881 responses to date. And on 3 occasions since April, the data has been analysed to form a progressive view and measures of wellbeing for our community. So the survey investigates all of the areas mentioned in your question, and results have been presented to the chairs of different committees to inform recovery planning, and we'll be very happy to present those to the council with an update on our recovery planning as well. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Ms Jeffs. Moving to Councillor Davies' second question. Thank you, Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I asked this second question just in relation to the stimulus funding that we see being released by the state and federal government, and my rationale is that perhaps Cardinia could act now and take advantage of this to see, just with view to see the major infrastructure being rolled out sooner rather than later. So my question for the CEO, Mr Mayor, is would the council officers please prepare a report for advice on avenues for advocacy on our growth area precinct planning, specifically with view to, if possible, fast track the schedule of planning investigations and increase public expenditure to in turn assist the COVID-19 pandemic recovery and ultimate best practice development in Cardinia.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. I'll refer that question to Ms Jeffs. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Davies, and through you, Mayor. Again, council officers are happy to prepare a report regarding advocacy on growth area precinct planning. And again, just quickly, the growth area planning team, in conjunction with various departments within our organisation, have been focused on advocacy in our precinct structure plan areas for quite a while now. And as you rightly say, we'll be looking out for plenty of opportunities to bring forward various aspects of such as road infrastructure, community infrastructure, jobs delivery, open space and housing diversity. Just in addition, respective mayors and CEOs for the past many years have been members of the Interface Council Group and the Greater South East Melbourne Group, which advocates strongly for additional funding always. We'll bring back a report to the council. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, CEO. Thank you, Councillor Davies, for raising those questions. I do look forward to those reports and results coming back to council. So thank you, councillors, for your attendance tonight. That concludes tonight's proceedings, but I just remind councillors and everyone watching on the live stream, we do have a town planning meeting next Monday. And the following Monday, we have a General Council meeting, the December Council meeting. So thank you to everyone tuning in, and I declare this meeting closed. Thanks, councillors. Thank you.